They called it integration, a beautiful word for what was, in essence, the slow suffocation of a world. Earth had been approached, invited into the Galactic Union, with promises of peace, advancement, and protection. In reality, it was a leash. Trade restrictions were enforced under the guise of ecological balance. Human research was bound by off-world ethics boards, most of which were composed of species who didn't even breathe oxygen. The first generation tried to fight back: petitions, protests, even low-level sabotage. None of it mattered. Earth's voice in the council was symbolic, a non-voting observer. They were tolerated, but not respected. Human companies were allowed to operate in galactic commerce zones, but never in high-tech sectors. They became contractors, resource extractors, cultural entertainers. Tourists came to Earth to see the primitive cradle world, never staying long, always amused by how quaint humans were. The Tenari in particular were fond of using Earth as a cautionary tale. This, they'd say, gesturing at news feeds of ration lines in depopulated cities, is what happens when chaos is allowed to govern civilization. But Earth didn't lash out, not after the first sanctions. Instead, they adjusted. The universities changed focus from quantum weapons to theoretical system design. Instead of building bigger ships, they invested in modular stealth technology. Forbidden to develop large-scale AI, they created fragmented neural clusters, legal by technicality, but capable of independent learning once networked. And they networked, quietly, invisibly, through servers no one paid attention to. Earth began to map everything: the trade routes, the Union's internal politics, the weaknesses in their economic spine. The Galactic Union didn't notice, because Earth made itself look small. Human delegates spoke little, voted less. Their planetary output dropped just enough to seem harmless. Their military presence outside the solar system was almost non-existent. Everything pointed to stagnation. The truth was that Earth had shifted from open resistance to strategic silence. Every insult, every limitation, every treaty forced upon them, Earth recorded, adapted, and repurposed it. No one noticed when Mars orbit stations were upgraded. They believed it was for tourism. No one paid attention to the asteroid colonies that vanished from public registries. They were written off as abandoned. And the orbital arrays Earth launched, the Council assumed they were for atmospheric monitoring. In truth, they were phase-link sensors capable of mapping the quantum footprint of any FTL jump within 300 light-years. The Vexari ambassador once laughed at a human diplomat during a cultural exchange. "You're clever in theory," he said, "but you lack the spine to lead." The human had smiled. "That's what makes us dangerous," he replied. "We don't need to lead. We only need to survive." Decades passed. The galaxy moved on. Earth was forgotten except when it was convenient to blame someone for low productivity or unprofitable treaties. That's what made it so easy. So perfect. When the storm finally came, no one realized Earth had built it from the very chains used to bind them. They let Earth run beneath notice. And Earth made sure to stay there. The appearance of compliance was more than a disguise. It was a weapon. While the Galactic Union dismissed humanity as stagnant, Earth evolved in directions no one was monitoring. Its research was fragmented across hundreds of civilian labs, each one focusing on legally insignificant microdomains. But when combined, those parts formed technologies the Union never saw coming. Neural fragments, individually harmless, were gradually linked using encrypted entanglement threads that bypassed standard oversight. The result wasn't one centralized AI, but thousands of them, cooperative, distributed, invisible. They weren't building warships. They were building infrastructure. Earth stopped thinking like a planet and started behaving like a system. They embedded dormant code into Union standard software. They seeded nanofabricators into supposedly harmless mining equipment. They planted data anomalies into civilian comm systems, indicators, triggers, and remote access keys hidden in harmless error logs. Every communication sent through Earth's networks was logged, studied, categorized. By the time the Union realized they couldn't track what Earth was doing, the net was already too wide. But Earth wasn't just planning for war. That would have been predictable. What they were planning for was leverage, the power to end a battle before it began. They focused on energy manipulation, on localized gravity distortion, on silent propulsion, and undetectable relay nodes. They weren't chasing numbers. They were chasing asymmetry. Where the Union relied on size and stability, Earth relied on unpredictability. At the same time, they were reaching out, not to the Council, but through back channels, through refugee groups, through marginalized species shoved to the edges of the galactic hierarchy. The Varu, once used as indentured labor in outer colonies, found Earth granting them digital citizenship. The Ciliari, whose language was banned in most core sectors, found preservation servers hosted on Terran nodes. To the Union, these were minor humanitarian gestures. But to those species, Earth became something else, an ally who asked for nothing in return. Quiet loyalties began to form. Non-human engineers, traders, and rogue researchers began routing their data through Earth systems, not for profit, for safety. By the time Earth completed its planetary defense shell, no one even noticed. It wasn't a wall of guns or missile platforms. It was silence, absolute, undetectable silence. The kind of silence that hides presence, the kind that precedes catastrophe. A Tenari analyst flagged some discrepancies in deep space logistics. Sensor lags, inventory mismatches, delayed FTO routes, all clustering near Terran-aligned zones. He raised the issue, wrote a report, and submitted it to the Oversight Board. It was dismissed. Earth, they said, was irrelevant. Too poor, too underpowered, too weak to matter. What no one saw was a shift in posture, not openly aggressive, but positioned. Every piece in place, every line connected, every chain, every regulation that had once bound humanity had been inverted, transformed into a system Earth could now strangle the Union with, not because they wanted war, but because they were finally done playing the game. It began with the disappearance of Valtor 6. No explosions, no distress signals, just silence. The central trade hub of 3 sectors, gone in under 30 seconds. Thousands of ships, communications relays, automated freighters, all dark. The Union scrambled to diagnose it as a freak gravitational event or a solar burst. Then it happened again, and again. By the time the 5th Core node vanished, panic had replaced protocol. Fleet Command tried to reestablish contact, but their jump systems failed. Not jammed, rejected. The entire network had rerouted itself through unknown protocols. The backbones of galactic transport no longer recognized Union authority. Then Earth spoke. A voice, human and calm, appeared simultaneously on every frequency. You taught us the rules. You shackled our growth. We learned. We adapted. And now we're correcting the imbalance. There are no demands, no threats, just a statement of transition. The Union wasn't losing control. It had already lost it. The Vexari tried to launch a retaliatory fleet. Mid-jump, their ships were ripped from transit and scattered into non-space, an artificial fault created by Earth's gravitational lattice. Entire battle groups erased in a moment. No wreckage, no recovery, just silence. Union defense AI tried to reassert control but found themselves overwritten by harmless maintenance subroutines installed decades ago. Coded by humans, embedded in firmware, invisible until now. Earth hadn't hacked the Union. They had built parts of it. Within 72 hours, 2/3 of the Union's civilian infrastructure had been seized or disabled. Water purification centers failed. Transportation routes collapsed. Even basic energy grids in the core worlds flickered under Earth's control. Still no deaths, no attacks, no violence. Just sudden, total paralysis. In desperation, the Council demanded Earth surrender its systems and explain its actions. Earth's response came not from generals, but from engineers. Data files, timelines, and blueprints were sent back, showing 4 decades of calculated restructuring. Every treaty Earth signed, every sanction they endured, it was all part of a long, patient reversal. Earth had never submitted. They had infiltrated. Panic swept through the core worlds. The illusion of superiority shattered. The mighty Tenari, once overlords of economic law, found their own vaults empty, drained by interest-free loans to Earth-fronted shell companies. The Vexari colonies began experiencing logistical shortages. The Ciliari, long considered irrelevant, suddenly control key data pathways, granted oversight by Earth's silent hand. Humanity hadn't declared war. They had executed a quiet, perfect coup. No blood, no armies, just absolute control. It was worse than war for the Union, because now they understood they had never broken Earth. They had trained it. Every barrier they had imposed had created pressure, and pressure had made something they couldn't comprehend. A civilization that didn't need their permission, their alliance, or even their acknowledgement. Now, Earth dictated the terms. And the first was simple: no more shackles. They came to Earth's new council not as rulers, but as beggars. The same voices that once mocked humanity's emotional fragility now pleaded for power to be restored, for trade to resume, for their people not to starve in the dark. But Earth didn't gloat. There was no parade, no speeches of vengeance. Just a quiet offer, mercy, if the galaxy was willing to earn it. The first condition was restructuring. The Galactic Union was dissolved overnight. In its place, Earth proposed a unified accord, a decentralized system with equal representation for every species, no matter their economic or military strength. The suggestion sent waves of outrage through former dominant species, but they had no leverage. Earth controlled the core. Resistance meant isolation, silence, and they had seen what that silence looked like. The second condition, reparations, not to Earth, but to those species the Union had exploited for centuries. Earth backed and protected the Varu reclamation movement, giving them autonomy over 8 core asteroid belts. The Ciliari were granted control over interspecies cultural networks, elevating a once-erased voice into a position of authority. Earth's own gain? Stability, influence, trust. They weren't just seizing power, they were remaking the playing field. Still, the fear lingered. Every new technology Earth introduced was met with silent unease. Their ships were not sleek, but angular and cold. Machines built for a purpose, not aesthetics. Their systems operated too efficiently. Even their silence carried weight. When a rogue Vexari warlord tried to defy the Accord, his fleet vanished. No message, no fight. The signal just stopped. The warning was clear. Mercy had its boundaries. What terrified the Union most wasn't Earth's might. It was their restraint. They didn't dominate through fear. They controlled through consequence. They didn't acquire loyalty, only respect. A new phrase spread among spacers and captains across the stars. If Earth speaks, listen. If Earth is quiet, run. Across the galaxy, children began learning a new history, one not written by victors, but survivors. Earth was no longer seen as a primitive backwater or a cultural oddity. It was now the center of stability, the hidden architect of peace. Not because they were kind, but because they had lived under a boot and knew exactly how it crushed. In private, an aging Tenari diplomat once asked a human envoy, "Why didn't you destroy us?" The human looked at him for a long time and said, "Because what we wanted was a revenge. It was a future. That future was now built atop the broken chains Earth had once worn. And everyone in the galaxy understood the message. Humanity forgives, but it never forgets.